It's Kyle. Welcome to 10 Toes Podcast, where we go 10 toes in and stand on our business. I'm with my man, Nelson.
What's up, brother?
Good to see you, man.
Good to be seen.
I did your show. Tell us about your show real quick.
Sure. So I'm the host of Among Thieves podcast, where we interview all kinds of people. Comes from all walks of life, especially prison. That's kind of like our thing.
That's the thieves part.
Right. A lot of reformed criminals, crazy stories, everything from drug dealers to fraudsters to counterfeiters, you name it. I've had almost everybody on. Some cops too, mainly focusing on the insane things that people can get into and the crazy stories, but also focusing on the redemption arc of, there is some honor among thieves,
Afterwards, for sure.
Afterwards, yeah, after they realize the error of their ways.
Like federal prison tips,
Yeah.
for instance.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I met you on TikTok one day. I saw one of the Honor Among Thieves things. It was geo-marked for Miami. I'm like, dude, you're like right down the street. Why are we not hooking up
Let's
and
do it.
doing this business? So Honor Among Thieves, you've been to prison?
I have, yeah. I went to prison for conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud.
And what were you doing with healthcare fraud?
So me personally, basically, I was approached when I was very desperate and very broke by this guy who knew a bunch of phony healthcare clinics, phony physical therapy clinics specifically. And I got offered money. At first, I got offered money just to go to the clinic myself and pretend I was getting physical therapy. And then I got handed basically an envelope with a bunch of money in it. And then it was literally just going and signing some papers. It wasn't even hard, really. And then the guy offered me more money if I brought people who had my same insurance. So I said, shit, we got like 600 people that work with us that have all my same insurance. So yeah, I just, one person turned into 20 turned into 50, and then it just spiraled. It got way out of control.
What kind of work were you doing
At the time, I was working in the healthcare field, in health insurance. I used to work for a company called Simply Healthcare Plans.
Okay.
They were in the Medicare area of insurance. That's what they did.
So a lot of people don't understand this about fraud. Did you develop this scheme and go out and do it?
I specifically did not, but it's a huge underground black market in Miami. Healthcare fraud is like rampant in Miami, and it really doesn't happen all that much outside of Miami, to tell you the truth.
A lot of fraud happens in Miami.
Yeah, I think we've spoken about this. Miami is the fraud capital of the world. I'm not proud to say that, but it's probably a fact. We're up there with Nigeria and India. It's not good.
So a lot of times fraud comes from opportunity.
Yeah.
Like for me, for instance, a lot of people don't understand because they'll be like, oh, well, I saw you on HBO. I saw you on Hulu. How'd you do that millions of dollars scheme? And it didn't start as a scheme. It went off the rails.
Yep.
Yours obviously started as a scheme, but not with you. But had you not been in that vulnerable position.
Correct.
Had that opportunity not been there.
Right.
Right?
For me specifically, had I not been broke at the time, there was a few things that kind of culminated. I was really frustrated at my job. I had been an entrepreneur almost my entire adult life, and I went into a position in life where I had to switch gears. We have to kind of reinvent ourselves. That happens to all of us. And I went from being a business owner, kind of salesperson, to being a regular employee. And my salary got slashed I went from being a high-paid salesperson, entrepreneur, this and that, where I kind of wrote my own paycheck, to making something like 30, 40 grand a year. It wasn't fun. So basically what happened was I was working at this place and I wasn't happy because I had worked really hard to try to work my way up, and they were basically suppressing me, and I had gotten in trouble at work over some dumb shit. And then I get approached by this guy who has the possibility of making all this money. It's like, you know what? It was part I was really desperate and broke, but also part all right, this is my way to,
How much are we talking at first?
I mean, it was anywhere between $2,000 to $3,000 per person I'd refer. And I'd typically pay half to the actual patient going to the clinic or whatever. So you're talking anywhere between $1,000 to $2,000 per person.
So you're telling me that you could go out and find somebody with the same insurance as you and be like, dude, I can give you $1,000. I need an hour of your time to go to a doctor's appointment.
That was the pitch, pretty much. that was pretty much the pitch. It was like, hey, listen, you want to make some extra money? I can make you $1,000. All you got to do is come, sign some paperwork. You're done. Never have to go back to that place. Who wouldn't say no? Like all my coworkers were making more or less the same amount of money as me, and they had kids and they had responsibilities. So for them, it was a no-brainer. Oh, $1,000, I just gotta spend it. Boom. Almost no one said no. Almost no one. Virtually no one.
So with all of this going on, and this being such a big thing in South Florida, in Miami in particular, why come after Nelson?
Well, it's funny how how typically with federal cases they catch the small fish and go up. Mm-hmm. In my case, it was backwards. Basically, what happened is they actually caught the middle fish that kind of like was connected to everything. And I'll take it a step further before I even start explaining that. He actually got caught on a totally separate case from mine. Had nothing to do with me. Had nothing to do with all the health insurance fraud going on. He got caught on some other scam because, like a good scammer, he was involved in every scam known to man. And then he gets caught by the feds, and they were supposedly going to give him 15 years. So he ends up getting 2. So you can imagine how many people he ratted out. Yeah. He ratted out on a god level. So what happens is he starts telling the feds about all the other shit he's into that no one has any idea about. Case in forth, the stuff he was doing with me. So he was the guy that connected people who knew people with insurance, like me, to the actual clinics. So he was the centerpiece. Once the feds got him, the case was basically over. Yeah.
Yeah, the up guys and the downstream.
Exactly. They had all the owners of all the clinics. They had little guys like me who actually brought the patients, who provided the insurances to get billed. So we were fucked as soon as they caught him. Everybody was fried. Everybody was done.
How much money did they say you were responsible for?
Well, at the beginning, they tried to tie me to the whole conspiracy, which was a $7 million case, which I was not responsible for $7 million. But towards the end of it, they stuck me with about $500,000.
Wow. And how much time did they give you?
8 months. 8 months. I ended up doing 5 because of CARES Act. Did you get out before?
I was out. I was in the entirety of COVID.
Fuck.
I was in the entirety of COVID. I went in on July 6, 2018 and got completely done on March 20th, 2024.
Wow. Okay, so you know exactly what I'm talking about then.
Yeah.
The CARES Act, how a lot of guys were getting 50% of their time. Luckily, I was one of them. So I got out. I went in January 2023, got out in May of 2023, the same year. And, some stuff happened at the halfway house, which is, you know how the feds are. I was supposed to go straight home. They held me hostage there. I ended up staying at the halfway house for no reason. Then I got sent home, did some some home confinement, and then I got released to probation. And a year later, filed, and here we are.
Did you file for early term?
Yeah.
And got off.
Got off.
Did you owe restitution?
I did.
Did you pay it all?
So a pretty crazy thing happened in my case. I was miserable after when I got this crazy, super low paying job after I got out.
Everybody does.
Yeah, right. So I was making these monthly payments, and my PO, for whatever reason, proposed, instead of getting 10% of your income, she proposed 15. So it was killing me. I was making maybe $1,900 a month at the time.
Whew.
It was destroying me. I mean, 10% of my income, if I'm making $10,000 a month, is $1,000. Even if it's 15, it's $1,500. But for me, $150 was like
the end of the
world. So I'm making payments every month, and I'm struggling to make payments. I really am. And I forgot what month it was. I think it was March. It was actually March of 2024, the month I went on Ian Bick's podcast. She calls me up after I get back from flying to Connecticut, and she's like, "Rodriguez, I got great news for you. Your restitution got paid off." And I was like, "Wait, what? How?" She says, "Well, the only thing I'm going to tell you is that one of your co-defendants paid off all the restitution, and you no longer have financial obligations." I wanted to ask her which co-defendant it was, but obviously she wasn't going to tell me. So I basically hit the lottery, honestly.
So when I'm dealing with clients at federalprisontips.com, we get this a lot. When you're in a big money conspiracy, the restitution amount is the same for everyone. And some people are more aggressive about paying. And some dude may have felt like, all right, well, I'm not even going to wait for Nelson here. Let me just pay it to get on with my life. And that's what happened in your case.
Yeah, it's probably exactly what happened.
But that exact same thing can hurt you in the reverse.
Tell me about that.
Say Nelson paid all his money, but now, say it's $3 million, and
Right.
Nelson paid $1 million, right? But they're still $3 million owed, and the other two guys are deadbeats. They're still $3 million owed, even though you paid your $1 million. You should feel like, okay, I'm done. But some rich guy, one of the guys is rich or hits the lottery or something, pays it all off. Nobody has anything. But that's probably what happened in your case.
I would assume that's probably what happened in my case. He just came across some cash. He paid it all off because he didn't want to deal with it anymore, and I just got lucky. I got incredibly lucky.
So what'd you do with the money? Okay, so you went from being broke. I get that because I've been there.
Yeah.
And you start making a little bit of money broke, and now you're the next middleman. So you said how many people were you moving through the system?
I wouldn't be able to tell you. The first round, because there's two. This happens twice. First round, maybe about 50 people. So we're talking about $150,000, something like that on the first round. Second round, another probably same amount, maybe a little more. $500,000 is pretty accurate. $500,000 in about a 12 to 14 month time span.
And so, what did you do with the $500,000?
I partied my ass off. I partied my ass off, man. I was in Costa Rica. I was in Colombia. I was, you name it. I was in every South American, Latin American hotspot partying with women and excess and boats and champagne and everything you can imagine. I probably did it during
living like a drug lord with a fraud case.
That's a good way to put it. This is an exclusive, by the way. No one's ever asked me that as far as what I did with the money.
That's what people want to know.
For sure.
You have all this money. I mean, I talk about it. The funny thing about money is, like, when I was going through the system at first, when I first got arrested, I was on all the news, and I'd go into, I was locked up because I had run. So anytime a news story ran, everybody, oh man, Kyle, can you break off? I'd be good if you gave me just $20,000. No, you wouldn't. I'd give you $20,000, and then you're going to want $20,000 more.
Yeah, 100%.
It just never stops.
Never stops. I helped out a lot of people when I was making all that fraud money, and
they didn't do shit.
Where were they when I got indicted? Like nowhere to be found.
No, they didn't do shit. That's what happened.
100%.
That's what happened in my case as well.
100%.
I gave up all kinds of money to family members, friends, and everything. Can't even get a fucking letter.
Yeah, not even a letter is pretty wild. And you know what's funny? The people who did write a letter, I still have those letters to this day, and those letters mean a lot, man. It's not about monetary stuff. Like if you write a letter to somebody who's doing time, it means a lot. It's like, damn, this guy took 30 seconds out of his day to think about me and send me something. It's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, and like people don't understand. We have a lot of prison people are going to watch this podcast, obviously, because of federal prison tips and because of you and because that's the community. We have a lot of people don't understand what it takes in the free world to actually write somebody a letter.
100%.
You have to write the letter, and you know what? A handwritten letter is 10 times more valuable than one you typed on the computer.
I agree.
Then you have to go get stamps. Listen, I was telling somebody, for federal prison tips business, I have clients at the ADX, and the only way they can communicate is letter writing. And for the longest time, I just didn't go get stamps. And so I felt like I was back in prison going to the commissary when I went to Walmart to the money counter. I was like, hey, how much is a book of stamps? Can I get a book of stamps?
That's funny.
Like, they're like, what do you need stamps for? And then you got to put the shit in the mailbox. I mean, it might seem small to you. And I was trying to tell my friends this in prison. You don't understand how much work it is to write a letter.
Yeah, the inconvenience of the day. I'll tell you something funny. That recently I didn't realize like all the steps it takes to send a letter until I wrote Fetty Wap recently.
You wrote Fetty Wap?
I wrote
to
Fetty
ask him
Wap
to be on the podcast.
Yes,
didn't you?
yeah, of course. He's up in FCI Sandstone up in Minnesota. He's doing 6 years on a conspiracy to distribute heroin and crack charge.
Did he write you back?
We'll see. I sent it off a couple of days ago.
So here's what I did.
Actually, funny enough, the first one I sent got sent back because I had stamps in the envelope like an idiot. I didn't want to make him pay for stamps. So, but they send it back.
You can't send stamps in the federal prison.
Do not put stamps in your envelope. They're going to
think
send
it's drugs.
Pretty much. So I just sent it again. I just re-enveloped it, sent it again, and
so here's what
Sorry, Fetty Wap, you're going to have to buy stamps.
Here's what I did. It was September when Diddy got indicted, I think. Yeah, September. September was the first month that I cleared $1,000 in my TikTok money, right?
Oh, that's cool.
So I sent a thank you card to Diddy
Mm.
in the mail, priority mail, in fact. Thanking him because I made $1,000. In September, it was Diddy videos that carried my TikTok channel.
He must, bro. How much mail do you think Diddy gets in the feds? Like, he must get thousands of letters.
Well, I was in New York in March, visiting my friends at Fast Law, and also celebrating my 1 year of freedom. And I went with a different attorney to the MDC during an attorney visit because we got on because I'm their consultant.
Right.
And, Luigi was out there, and there was like 3 people talking to him and all this kind of stuff.
Diddy and Luigi are like in the same place.
I can't imagine, like, that mailroom's got to be fucking crazy.
It's got to be a nightmare to organize it. Nightmare. Absolute nightmare.
At that particular time, SBF is gone now, but you had SBF, you had Luigi, you had Diddy, and you have all the other big-time guys in the Southern District of New York.
Oh, man.
Southern District is the biggest district, and then this one is the biggest district for fraud, for sure.
100%.
Let's talk about podcasting.
Sure.
You're the one guy out of all of us that didn't just start this when you got out of prison.
No, I had already started a podcast prior to prison, actually. So when I got indicted in July of 2021, my life fell apart overnight. I lost my business. I couldn't work in healthcare anymore. I literally lost everything that, all my material possessions or whatnot. Spent all my money paying a lawyer. So I had nothing. I had really no real direction in life. I needed to revamp, and I was still in limbo. And I'll say this, for me, I would have been more at peace if I would have known I was going to prison sooner, because my lawyer, who had been working on federal cases for over 20 years, had the audacity to tell me that there was a possibility I wasn't going to get time, and he was flat out lying to me. So basically what happened was, like, moral of the story, I just wish I would have known, because it would have been, the bond wouldn't have been torturous, being out on bond. I
would have told anybody with $500,000 there's not a chance that you're not going to prison.
For sure, 100%.
And I get those freaking phone calls, and they're like, "Man, I only have 1.2 million. You think I can get home? You think I can get home confinement? No, motherfucker, you're going to prison.
You're going to prison, 100%. And I would have been fine with it, but I basically paid my lawyer $30,000 to fucking lie to me. But anyway, so what happens there is I gotta figure out what to do with life. Like, I need a new direction. So I say, you know what? I'm gonna write a book, because even if I go to prison or whatever, I die tomorrow, the book is here. Someone can check it out. So I wrote a book. I started writing it in September of 2021. Published it in March of 2022. Had a little book launch at this event in South Miami. Made a few $1,000s that night. It went really well. And then I decided to start the podcast in June of 2022. Because it made more, like, the most sense. And I also was a big Joe Rogan fan, and me and Joe Rogan actually have the same birthday, fun fact. So, yeah.
Have you seen my Joe Rogan AI video for this?
You showed it to me, yeah. That's awesome.
Somebody thought it was real. I was like, dude, that AI is good. If you're watching right now, the AI promo, the Joe Rogan promo is AI.
That's awesome. So basically, I decided to start the podcast in June of 2022. Had no clue what I was doing. I started audio only with no video. It was just me in some office recording by myself. And I honestly didn't know what direction I wanted to take it, but I knew it was the thing I wanted to do. I finally get sentenced in October of 2022. And what I decided to do is I record a bunch of episodes so they can premiere while I'm in prison. And
that was a good idea.
Yeah. It gave me some forward momentum. Actually, when I got out in May of 2023, some clips had gone viral. And that was basically,
wow.
Yeah.
With no push.
No push. Just scheduled everything before I left, and when I got back, I had a clip on YouTube that had like 150,000 views. It was the best fit. Now I've done millions on some clips, but at the time when I was nobody coming out of prison, it was like, it gave me hope. I was like, yeah.
Oh my God, I'm going to be a podcaster.
Yeah, so I started podcasting right away, but then I had a different twist, right? Because I didn't want to talk about my case when I was out on bond, but now that I was out, I was open about doing time, having been to prison, all that, and every time I talked about prison, just people loved it. People were going crazy over it. Eventually, I had to rebrand, and I created Honor Among Thieves, and now I'm a true crime podcaster.
That is an awesome story.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
So where are you? I'm really against the whole podcasting thing. Tell me about your education. Tell me about kindergarten. But But are you from South America, South Colombia?
No, I'm Cuban.
You're Cuban. Okay.
I'm Cuban on both sides of my family. I was born and raised in Miami, Florida. Yeah. So being raised in Miami is like being raised in another country. You know, no one speaks English.
No, right here in the building where we work and live, nobody speaks English either.
That's funny.
One of my best buddies, Waldo, hardly speaks English.
Yeah, Waldo. He speaks better English than most people in Miami. I'll tell you that much. That's for sure. Well, shout out to Waldo. He's another friend of mine I did some time with. So basically, what happened was when I grew up. Spanish is my first language. My mom speaks English, but my dad doesn't. None of my family members speak English. Like you go to the corner store, gas station, Spanish. You go to Publix, Spanish. Everyone speaks Spanish. So I was pretty blessed to grow up in Miami because it made me very entrenched into my culture. You know, Cuban restaurants on every corner.
Oh, yeah.
Cuban bakeries. So
I mean, we do pretty well at my company, but if I spoke Spanish, I couldn't even begin to tell you
the
how
amount
much
of money. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Especially with the amount of Puerto Ricans I was locked up with. Oh, my God. Florida's federal prison system is flooded with Puerto Ricans, bro. It's pretty wild.
I hear it's crazy in Pensacola and in Miami.
Yeah.
How was Coleman Camp?
Flooded with Puerto Ricans, man. There was maybe 500 of us in the whole camp. I'd have to say like 300, 350 were Puerto Rican. It was pretty wild. They basically ran the place. You know, if you needed anything, you had to talk to a Puerto Rican. You know? So, were you scared when you were going to prison? Yes, I was terrified. I had never been in trouble. I had never been arrested. You know, I thought I was going to some, you know, what you see in the movies. I was going to get, like, initiated into a gang or something to survive. You know, I thought I was going to have to, like, you know.
You had to go beat up the biggest, blackest, tallest, I was like, biggest dude when you got in, right?
Yeah, the first guy that fucks with me, I'm going to knock him the fuck out in front of everybody. That kind of shit. But then obviously you get to the camp and it's different. You notice, you know, I had a funny story about my first night in the shower. So I'm taking a shower and I left my slides at the end of the stall. So I was the only Cuban in my whole unit. So I hear someone yelling, "Cuba! Cuba!" So obviously I know they're talking about me and I'm naked in the shower, scrubbing soap on my, and I'm like, why is somebody calling my name while I'm taking a shower?
You need to put the shower shoes on.
Right. So Mello walks up to my stall. Mello is a Puerto Rican gangster that's on his third bid and that has a scorpion tattoo on his face. Oh, so the guy walks up to my shower stall and I'm already like, all right, he's going to kill me. All right, cool. I'm going to die.
Tonight, right here.
Yeah, right here, right now.
Naked. My mom doesn't even know.
It sucks. But anyway, he was pointing at the shower slides. He was like, well, ponte la chancleta. Put your... So I go to my room and Mello walks over and he's like, wait. He's like, bro, in Spanish, he's telling me, you've never done time? I was like, hell, bro, no, I've never done time. He's like, bro, you're going to get fucking fungus on your feet, bro. You know?
One of my first TikToks on federal prison tips on TikTok and Instagram was like one of the things that I was looking for. It's funny because I told my husband, he tells me all kinds of great lovey-dovey stuff and about what he wanted when I first got out. And the first thing I wanted to do when I got out was take a shower without shower shoes on.
Yes,
that was the first thing I wanted to do.
Brother.
And so when I got home to him, he's like, no, go take your shower.
Bro, for me, I got to the halfway house thinking, when I didn't know what to expect, but when I saw it was still a communal bathroom, I was like, fuck, bro, I still got to take a shower with these fucking slides on. When I got home and I didn't have to take a shower with slides, it was like, oh my God. It felt weird.
And it's funny because I'm going to be 50 in November, right?
You look great for your age.
Thank you. And I spent 8 years all in incarcerated. I probably hadn't, prior to that, taken a bath since I was like 30-something, maybe 20-something. But man, you know, I had a whirlpool tub when I first got out.
That's funny.
I needed the tub and no shower shoes.
Yeah, that's the way to go.
What were some of the other like misconceptions or funny things you didn't realize about prison?
I didn't know that there was different kinds of prisons, right?
So you thought you were going in a cell and...
Yeah, I thought I was going in a prison cell with a bunch of gangsters and a bunch of fucking murderers and, you know? I was like, I'm gonna die in prison. I'm gonna fucking die. You know, whatever. I'll kill one of them at least, you know, whatever.
When did you finally feel safe?
After the first night. Once I slept and nothing happened to me, I was like, bro, what am I so scared of? This isn't anything. I'm fine, you know. And then as the first week I got acclimated, I realized there's no violent offenders in there. Everybody's in there basically for making money. You know, you're either a drug dealer or a fraudster. That's pretty much it. That's everybody at a camp, you know. And then I spoke Spanish, so I became friends with pretty much all the Puerto Ricans.
With everybody at Coleman Camp.
Yeah, everybody at Coleman, yeah. There was a small group of Dominicans. And yeah, man.
When did you go to Coleman Camp?
I was there from January of 2023 until May of 2023.
So it had been in men's camp for a little while.
Yeah, it did get converted from a female camp, yes. It was a female camp before I went there.
Let me ask you, because when Butner Low was built, it was built to be a women's prison, and then they changed its classification. There's no urinals in Butner Low.
Yeah, we only
Is
had...
that the same thing with the
camp?
Yeah,
I think we only had toilet. Yeah, we only had toilets.
Yeah.
We only had
there's
toilets.
There's 1,000 men at Butner Low and not one urinal in the whole fucking place. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. My dad, funny story about Coleman Camp. My dad is a truck driver, and he remembered dropping off some load there one time. And he says that he remembered, you know how the girls work or whatever. They were unloading the truck or some shit. And then one of the girls was like, do you have a cigarette? You know, kind of. And then he was like, he didn't know what to do. And he says that she lifted her shirt. She went, "Fwah!" Flashed him. And then he was like,
Here, have a cigarette. Put your titty away.
By the way, what is it with all the women in the feds? They're all hot.
I know, right? Because you know why? Because for a woman to get locked up, you got to do a lot of crazy shit.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, and I tell a lot of people this, and I do it in videos, like, your normal run-of-the-mill women charges, they're all stateside.
Interesting.
And to do something in the feds and be a woman, you got to do it big, and you got to, you know, it's got to be bad.
That makes sense.
That's exactly right. But most of the women left Coleman and went to Mariana, I believe.
Yes,
in Florida.
yes, Mariana. Yep. So, and not to mention the atrocities I heard that were committed while it was a women's campus. It's pretty crazy. Yeah.
So let me ask you another question.
Sure.
What has been one of the hardest things about readjusting to normal life?
People not wanting to give you a fair shake. Basically starting over with nothing, with no one willing to give you a handout besides people like, you know, people in our community that know what we've been through, which I'm pretty grateful for, because if it wasn't for people like Ian Bick, people like Ross Mandel, people like yourself that I collaborate with, I wouldn't realize that I'm not alone. There's hundreds of thousands of men that have been through this situation before. I won't be the first. I won't be the last. I have no excuse. Many men before me have came out, done great things with their lives, rebuilt everything, become better people. And just the fact that I had that example is pretty cool. But for me personally, I had a special purpose. Like, I went into prison as a podcaster, but what made me really understand that I went to prison for a purpose was after I heard all the stories. Like, I realized my purpose was to bring these stories to life, you know?
Is there any particularly crazy story that you heard while you were at Coleman that, like, resonates above all the others?
I mean, I have a friend that's actually outside today. His story's pretty wild, but I'll let him tell his own story when he's on my podcast, when he's able to. I have a friend of mine named Brother Kenny. Brother Kenny had been in prison longer than I had been alive. I'm 32 years old. The man was on his second bid. First bid was 12 years, if I'm not mistaken. Second bid, he was basically never going to get out. Like, I'm 32 years old, and the guy had been in prison longer than I had been alive. Like,
now,
crazy.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's dropped yet or it's coming. One of the podcasts that I'm looking forward to watching on Among Thieves is, correct me if I'm wrong, but you know one of the original cocaine cowboys.
Yes, George Valdez. I'm very excited to drop that podcast. That's coming out the first week of May. It's actually, his story is so insane that he's the first 2-part podcast I've ever dropped. So I'm going to be dropping part 1 or part 2 over 2 weeks.
Now, this is, when they talk about, like, he's one of the cocaine cowboys, right?
He's the original cocaine cowboy. He founded what later became known as the Medellin cartel. He was the guy. Like, he started the cocaine trade in the United States.
In Miami.
He actually, funny enough, Misconception, he started the cocaine trade in California, and then later it transferred over into Miami, yeah. So, You're talking about the guy who handed over his connect when he went to prison to Sal Magluta and Willie Falcone. Like, you're talking about the guy. Smuggling in 600 kilos a month in 1977, when no one even knew that amount of cocaine ever existed in one location. You know what I mean? Like, if you knew about coke in the late 70s, you were probably like a disco dancer or some shit, just trying to, you know.
The funny thing is, like, the way coke is now, when I'm talking to a new client at Federal Prison Tips, it's like, oh, you only have coke? Okay. Because if you have fentanyl, it's like, you know,
Oh my God.
in the 90s, it was crack, right? And then meth became the new crack.
Yes.
And then now fent's the new crack. And, like, crack is just crack.
No, fentanyl.
And coke is just coke. But,
yeah, fentanyl.
I mean,
is
you'll
insane.
do, if you got this much fent in a room full of coke, you're going to go to prison longer for this.
Yes, 100%. He actually mentioned a very interesting conversation I had with him. I had him give his take on the fentanyl situation. Super interesting conversation about that. I'm dying to drop it. It'll be out in the first week of May. But super interesting guy. Did 2 federal bids. First one was 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. Second one was 10 years. I mean, bro, he was in the game before Pablo. He was in the game before Griselda Blanco. He was in the game before El Chapo. You're talking about, and you know what's crazy? He never killed anybody. Wasn't even a violent business when he was involved. Like, everything was a handshake deal. Everyone kept their word. Deliveries were on time. Money got paid. If money was short, he'd call him and say, hey, you're 10 grand short. You know, bring it up on the next shipment.
And now it's like, sell me.
Yeah, no, yeah. And then he'd be, oh, you're 10 grand over. You're credited on the next shipment. Like, bro, it's crazy. It's crazy. And then, bro, he crashed a load of coke in Panama, got tortured by Noriega. His story is nuts. By far, one of the most insane stories I've had on the podcast.
What's your second most insane story?
Oh, I mean, where do I start? I had a guy. So check this out. A friend of mine named Manny Vitali out of Detroit. He's a cop. Quits the force to become a biker. That can't make this shit up. He quits the Detroit PD and becomes a Detroit highwayman, which is a very notorious biker gang.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Got shot in the face. Like, he tells you the story of how he got, it's wild. Still has the eye. Can't even tell he got shot, but got shot point blank by a 45 in the face. There's just so many, man. And so many to come.
Let me tell you one that I thought was very interesting and a definite new take, but was eye-opening. You interviewed Ian Bick's father.
I did.
Michael, right?
Michael Bick.
I mean, we see him sometimes on Ian's thing. He does the cooking thing.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you had a really nice heart-to-heart chat with him.
I did.
Because people don't realize how incarceration impacts people. And when I talk to parents, it's typically a mom in her 60s, and her son has, done something in the drug trade. And this might, by the time they get to the feds, this is their second or third time around.
Right.
And they're just, you can hear the defeat in their voices. I talk to these people every single day. And Michael, it was eye-opening to hear the perspective of, like, oh my God, the feds are here to
take my son,
to take my little boy away. I mean, Ian is not a big dude still, but he was just basically a kid when this happened.
He was like 19, 18, something like that. And it was pretty interesting to see the perspective of a family member whose child is getting indicted. For me personally, it reminded me a lot of my mother. That was the first time I ever cried in my podcast. He just made me, like, the amount of unwilling support, like unwavering, unnegotiable support he had for his son, and the big fuck you to the federal, like, fuck you, this is my son, you're not gonna fuck with my son. Like, dude, kudos to him. He is the example of what every father in the world should be. He supported his son through thick and thin. They have a great relationship. He's a really good father, and he gave a good perspective on what the family goes through.
So let's get down to business about this. So tell me about Ian. Is he a good dude? I mean, so I'll go with me first.
Sure.
Because there wasn't really I started a beef over some misconceptions. And the reason that I started a beef with Ian was this. I feel, because every time you see, a lot of times when Ian's talking, he talks about the success that he had as a kid who owned nightclubs when he
Right.
was very successful.
Right.
And so that pops an image of money in your head.
100%.
And I feel like if he went into prison doing the same thing, and I have no doubt that he did, that's what made him a target. So fast forward to, I have a 60-year-old, white doctor calling me up, talking, who has to surrender to Fort Dix, which is where Ian had to pay for protection.
Right.
And he's like, I just watched Ian Bick, and I need to know how much money I need to have my people put on my books so that I can pay for protection. And I'm like, man, you don't need to pay for protection at Fort Dix. At Fort Dix. Yeah, I do. Ian Bick says you do.
Right.
I said, are you going to go in there and flaunt all your wealth and all that? I don't have any money. Great. Make sure everybody knows that, and you're not going to have to pay for protection. But another podcaster here in Florida, Kevin Lanning, broke it down saying, like I said earlier, I'm about to be 50. Ian's not even 30, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's in
So
his late 20s.
20 years older than him. And had 20-year-old Kyle gone into prison, I'd have made those same mistakes for sure. And so, we were talking about Ian and Kevin Lanning. So Jason Welcherbach, who's my partner for 10 Toes podcast, he's on a podcast in Bliss. He's done a lot of big shows.
Right.
He finds out about Kevin Lanning over in Jupiter and calls me up and tells me to call this guy because he already put him on to me. And I go to do Kevin, and the last thing he asked me about is like, what's the deal with Ian Bick? Because at that point, I was still kind of poking shots at him. And it wasn't, we were having our own success. So I wasn't worried.
Right.
I wasn't trying to ride off his coattails or anything like that. But, he put it into perspective for me. Ian is 20 years younger than me. We have a lot of the same personality and life traits.
And similar stories, too.
And similar stories. I did Generation Hustle. He did Generation Hustle. The funniest part is that when he started doing TikTok in 22, and I started doing TikTok in 22, we were neck and neck till I went back to prison. And then he took off like a rocket in the 13 months I was in prison.
He's killing it on TikTok.
Which is awesome for
He just
him.
got his $1 million plaque, his million follower plaque. Yeah.
And then he had a lot of success at a young age. When I was his age, I was on some of the biggest radio stations in the country. Had I gotten hemmed up and locked up and put in prison, I would have been just the same way.
Which you almost did because of all that payola stuff.
Yeah, I was getting paid a lot of money to play records, and I would have been in deep shit. And I would have been his age had I gone to prison at that time. It'd been crazy. But no, so now I'm going up in June to Connecticut to do
it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Show.
Yeah.
And have some fun. Hopefully, do some federal prison-esque skits, because I razz him sometimes about county jail skits when he didn't do any county time.
Right.
Now we're gonna do some federal. Me and Ian will probably do some Fed skits.
There you go.
Because things are different in the Feds.
Totally different. Very different. Yeah. You don't wear orange.
You don't.
You wear brown, baby.
Well, at some camps you wear
green.
hunter green.
Yeah. In Jessup they wear green over.
In Montgomery they wear hunter green, and then you wear the khaki and all the lows and mediums I was at. But you get so much, there was so much freedom at camp that I didn't even realize. For me, my own personal story, like I said on your podcast, I ran for 18 months.
Right.
So when I finally was apprehended, they weren't letting me go nowhere. I'm black boxed wherever I go, which is a pain in the ass. So because of that, I was in a county jail then for the next 13 months after that, at a county jail where you never saw the light of day. I hadn't been outside in 13 months.
Wow.
So the day that I get to the camp, to Montgomery, I started at the Montgomery, finished at a medium, went back to a medium, then finished at a low. When I started at Montgomery, that very first day, it was July 6th of 2018. And I stayed, they had 10 o'clock count. And I stayed outside till recall at 9:45, simply because I could. I wasn't doing shit, just walking around aimlessly like the new guy on the block with the deer in the headlights, but I was outside. The biggest shocker for me going to camp was I got checked in at R&D, got my bag of stuff, and they're like, next stop is medical, so I'm waiting for a guard to handcuff me up to go to medical, and they're like, oh, it's around the corner. What the fuck do you mean it's around the corner? No, you just go out that door. I'm just going to walk over there? All right, let's do it. And, we got a friend of ours that's watching who's actually been to Lowe's and stuff, so he knows the same feeling from going to a camp. It's like, what
He's at the medium in Virginia, too. Yeah.
It's a whole different world.
Whole different ballgame.
What's next for Nelson?
More podcasting. I'm working the YouTube channel is doing great. It looks like I'll be monetized by the summer, based on the traction I'm getting, and just start doing this full time. Start podcasting multiple times a week, bigger guests, bigger stories. I'm really looking forward to bringing my flavor into the true crime podcast world because there's so many crazy stories that I have access to that no one has ever heard of. And I know that the world is just going to be like flabbergasted by these crazy stories, you know?
And so my one final thought on that is, who is the guest that you want the most?
Like my white buffalo, that my dream guest?
Yeah, what's your dream guest?
Oh, man, he's not alive. It'd probably be like John Gotti.
Forget about it.
You know? But if we're talking about like somebody who's alive today, my dream guest, man, if I could, a really special guest, I'd have to get access to his prison or something. But I think a really special guest that no one has ever interviewed that would be insane would be like Sal Magluta. That'd be crazy. That's an original Miami Cuban story like I can really relate to, and that'd be sick. That'd be a sick story. I think so, yeah.
Where can people find you?
Honor Among Thieves Pod on Instagram, Honor Among Thieves Podcast on TikTok. Montana the Prophet is my personal page on Instagram. You can find us Honor Among Thieves on YouTube as well. Shoot us a DM if you got a great story. I'd love to have you on.
Where's the Montana the Prophet come from?
So when I went into prison, I knew that version of me was dead. Like I wasn't gonna be that person anymore. I was gonna be a new guy, new person. And my friends have called me Montana my entire adult life because I'm obsessed with the movie Scarface. So I got this vision after I started hearing all these stories, and I realized my purpose in life was to bring these stories to the world. I felt like a prophet, like a prophecy, you know. So Montana the Prophet.
For 2 years, I was the OM cook at Montgomery.
Okay.
Then I got in trouble, and I had to go to Pots and Pans. So can you guess what I told the food service administrator right when he told me I had to do Pots and Pans?
What?
Don't call me no fucking dish. I'm not the fucking dishwasher.
I ain't no fucking dishwasher, man. Okay. That's awesome. That's fucking priceless.
All right, join us right here next time for 10 Toes Podcast. Find us at 10 Toes Podcast on all social. Find me at Federal Prison Tips on all social. And if you are headed to federal prison, if you or a loved one is in federal prison or facing federal prison, go to federalprisontips.com.